Okay, let's start Chapter 11, Radical and Exponential Functions. We are skipping ahead because Chapter 11 returns to exponents, so we're going to do part of it now, and then we'll come back to it again later. 11-1 is about square root functions, and functions that are square root functions have a square root, so that's a square root function. Y equals x squared is not. Y equals root 2x plus 1, that's a square root function, and y equals 2 divided by x minus 1 is not a square root function. It has to have the square root symbol in order to be a square root function, which makes sense. In example 1, we have to evaluate, and we're given a formula to use. The speed in feet per second of an object in free fall after falling x amount of feet is y equals 8 times the square root of x. So this is the formula we're going to use for example 1. Y equals 8 times the square root of x. Let's read the question. Find the speed of an object in free fall after it has fallen 16 feet. So that means my x is 16. I'm going to plug that in my equation. Y equals 8 times the square root of 16. Well, first let's do this part. What is the square root of 16? And that's 4. 8 times 4 gives me 32. So the speed of the object is 32 feet per second. In example B, now let's find the speed after it has fallen 20 feet. I'm going to use the same formula, y equals the square root, or 8 square root of x, and my x this time is 20. Y equals 8 times the square root of 20. And the question says round to the nearest tenth. That's because the square root of 20 is not a perfect square. It wasn't like 16. So I'm going to use my calculator to find the square root of 20, and that is 4.47 times 8. But it says to round to the nearest tenth, so that 4.47, because that's a 7, I round it up. So I have 8 times 4.5, and 8 times 4.5 is 36. So the object speed is 36 feet per second. So in example 1, you're using a new formula and then just plugging in the number you're given. For example 2, let's review the domain. The domain is always the x, right? Range is the y, domain is the x. And for the domain of square root functions, it always has to be greater than or equal to 0 under the square root. So under the square root, I have to have it greater than or equal to 0. Let's try example 2a. We need to find the domain of y equals 1 plus x minus 4. I only care about this square root part because that's where the x is. So I'm going to say x minus 4. Okay, everything that's under the square root. So right here, x minus 4 has to be greater than or equal to 0. I'm going to solve for x. And I get x has to be greater than or equal to 4. Let's try b. Y equals the square root of 4 times x plus 3. I want everything under the square root sign. So I'm going to take 4 times x plus 3, and that has to be greater than or equal to 0. I have parentheses. X plus 3 are not like terms. I can't combine them. So I'm going to distribute the 4 first instead. 4x plus 4 times 3 is 12, and that has to be greater than or equal to 0. Now these are just, excuse me, like the inequalities we did earlier in the year. So I have my x term, and I have the other thing. Let's do the inverse of the other thing first. I'm going to subtract 12. This goes away, and I get 4x is greater than or equal to negative 12. Divide it by 4, and you get an answer of x has to be greater than or equal to a negative 3. And that would be the answer. All right, it's your turn. Please do check it out, 1A, 1B, and 2. They're just like the examples in the video. And the check it out starts on page 700. All right, everyone, good job. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.